The first piece that we have before us is RS 2012-395, sponsored by myself. And this resolution appropriates $8,745,000 from the General Fund Reserve Fund to 12 departments. And there is, do we need to take the amendment first?
We've got actually a substitute and an amendment. So we'll need the substitute first.
Okay. There is a substitute. Substitute's been properly moved. Do we have a second?
The substitute adds the appropriation, $500,000 appropriation for the hospital authority, which had been submitted in time, but due to a technical error, didn't actually make it into the resolution. It also corrects a typo for the Planning Commission appropriation.
Do I have a second on the substitute? It's been properly moved and seconded. Could we go ahead and vote on this
Go
now?
vote on the substitute.
I would like to ask all those in favor of the substitute, if you will vote aye. All those opposed to the substitute? All right, we can move forward. Now, do we need to offer the amendment?
There is an
Mr. Cooper?
amendment that there's an amendment that has been submitted in your packet that would delete the $400,000 appropriation for the Election Commission to purchase the second round of the electronic polling books. So you would need someone to offer to move the amendment that's on the committee.
It's been properly moved for the amendment. Do I have a second? Councilman Baker, thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Councilman Tiger?
Yes, is the Election Commission here?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me, I guess, first of all, introduce yourself, and then secondly, tell us what the Election Commission's position is on this amendment?
Sir, my name's Bill Hayden. I'm the finance manager for the Election Commission. My boss, Albert Tisch, is in a commission meeting right now, and he would like to have this delayed or be able to speak to it in the 6:30 meeting. But he apologizes for not being here at this moment, but this was the meeting that he's in was scheduled last month, and he would like to be able to speak to it. He just couldn't make it at 4 o'clock.
Mr. Cooper, what are the logistics of allowing that to occur?
The body can vote. The body can vote to allow Mr. Tisch or someone to address the council, but it would take a vote, 2/3 vote of those members present to allow that to happen.
And the action of a deferral tonight or passage of this amendment, what would be the?
Well, a deferral of the resolution would keep all of the other departments from being able to make the purchases and obtain the money.
The amendment is to delete this $400,000, though?
Yes.
Could a resolution be forthcoming 2 weeks from now
Yes.
to put this back on?
Yes.
Would a 2-week delay cause any harm to the Election Commission?
No, sir, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Tiger. Council Lady Moore?
It was about the same question. I just needed some clarification, and since, the Election Commission is not here, then I'm okay.
If you remember,
There you go.
in previous years, we actually had each individual 4% appropriation be in a different resolution. So you might have 25 resolutions on one. Last term, we went back to putting them all together. So this would basically just be taking out the Election Commission and having it come back as a separate resolution next time.
I would just like to add to the committee that I did speak with Ms. Nixon at the Election Commission also after this was introduced last week, and she indicated that they are not planning on using the electronic poll books in the upcoming election in November, regardless of whether they get this appropriation or not at this time. So it would not affect the next election, but would affect elections that will come after the November election coming up. Councilman Tiger?
Yeah, I just wanted to make as part of our request, Mr. Cooper, that you go ahead and prepare. It seems to me that there are so many questions that I know I have, and I suspect other council members would have, that we just go ahead and prepare a separate resolution, and let's go ahead and talk about it 2 weeks from now. Thank you.
All right, we need to vote on the amendment. All those committee members in favor, say aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the amendment passes. Now I will entertain a motion for the substitute as amended. It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. The next resolution on our agenda is RS 2012-396, sponsored by Matthews and Bennett, approves an application for a state grant of $27,000 to the state trial courts to enhance courtroom technology. It's been properly moved. Do I have a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Next resolution is 2012-397, sponsored by Matthews and Bedney, approves a grant of $19,700 from the National League of Cities to the Mayor's Office of Children and Youth for a pilot program to provide after-school meals. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Resolution passes. RS 2012-398, sponsors Bennett and Matthews, approves a state grant of $183,350 to the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management to subsidize Metro's emergency management program. Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? All opposed? Resolution passes. Next resolution, RS 2012-399, sponsors Matthews and Bennett, approves an intergovernmental agreement between the U.S. Marshals Service and the Metro government for reimbursement of overtime expenses incurred by the police department as part of the Violent Offender Task Force. Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Resolution passes. RS 2012-400 approves an amendment to a federal grant to the Metro Fire Department to hire 35 new firefighters by increasing the amount by $309,120,000. I'm just messing up my numbers. Councilman Tiger, can you help me read this? $309,120 for a new grant total of $4,201,120. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Resolution passes. RS 2012-401 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle Metro government's claim against Rechuana Akoi for the amount of $6,000. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Tiger?
Mr. Cooper, there's some legalese in your description there. Everything is in order on this, on your analysis.
Yes, we're accepting slightly less than the amount of money that we paid out, but that is due to a legal doctrine recognized by the Tennessee courts allowing the attorney to recover his attorney fees.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Resolution passes. RS 2012-402 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Deborah Stone against the Metropolitan Government for the amount of $20,000. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Tiger?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cooper, this is an example where, in addition to the claim, Metro is paying for pain and suffering. If the shoe is on the other foot, we can't accept pain and suffering for our employees if the accident is the fault of the public.
Well, the individual employee would or may have a cause of action against the driver. Like the last settlement was one where she was injured while in the course and scope of employment, but had a claim against the driver at fault. And so as part of that settlement, she may have recovered pain and suffering, but that would
Directly
go to the
employee,
employee, not to the government.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Resolution passes. RS 2012-403 authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle the personal injury claim of Michael Wilson against the Metropolitan Government for the amount of $9,000. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Resolution passes. Bills on second reading. BL 2012-237 amends the Metro Code to implement a number of recommendations of the Study and Formulating Committee pertaining to the employee and retiree benefits and pensions. There are two proposed amendments. Do we need to take those first?
Yes, consider each one.
All right. Is there anyone here to offer the First Amendment?
Mr. Claiborne is here and he's going to ask that both be offered, but someone on the committee would need to make the motion.
Okay. Is there anyone on the committee that would be willing to make?
The First Amendment changes the effective date essentially to January 1st so that it would apply to employees hired after January 1st, 2013. So if you want to take the first one.
All right, we can take the First Amendment. I need a second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? First Amendment passes. Could I ask the question on the Second Amendment? Is Ms. Claiborne again?
Yes, the Second Amendment is sponsored by Councilman Claiborne, and it would, if you will recall, Councilman Todd had a bill that was deferred indefinitely pending the Study and Formulating Bill coming that would prohibit, after 2019, former council members would not be eligible for the subsidized Metro health insurance. And so this amendment adds the provisions of that bill into this bill. Is there a motion on the
There is.
second one?
I would entertain a motion.
Okay, so you will not make a recommendation on the Second Amendment.
Okay. Not seeing any motion come forth, we will not make a recommendation as a committee on the Second Amendment. Would anyone like to make a motion on the bill itself? It's been properly moved and seconded on the bill. Any discussion? Councilman Tiger?
I guess, John, if you would just give us the thumbnail recap of some of the major points here, and that will lead me into a question or two.
Okay. One of the main points is moving from 5-year to 10-year vesting for both retiree health benefits and for pension. In 2001, the government went to a 5-year vesting. This takes it back to 10-year vesting. So that's the one key aspect. Another is to base the amount of the premium for health insurance for retirees to be based upon the years of credited service they had with the government. Right now, it's retirees pay the same percentage that Metro employees pay, which is 25%, with Metro picking up 75%. For employees hired after the effective date, when they retire, it would be based upon their total credited years of service. So if they had 10 to 15 years, they would pay 75% and Metro would pay 25%. And then it goes all the way up to 20 or more years would be the 25% responsibility of the employee and 75 Metro. It eliminates the retiree benefits for employees who leave the government before they retire. Right now, if you're vested, which you can vest with 5 years, and you leave and go work somewhere else, when you reach retirement eligibility, you can come back on Metro's health insurance at the subsidized rate, the 25% rate. So this would provide that you would only be entitled to those benefits if you were an employee or were eligible for retirement at the time you left the employment of Metro. And then it allows retirees to opt out of health coverage, which the code could actually kind of be read that way now anyway to allow it, but this specifies that retirees would be eligible if they had other coverage through a spouse. They could go on that spouse's plan and then opt back into Metro's plan as long as they maintain continuous non-Medicare coverage. And then finally, it would require Metro to implement what's called an EGWIP, an employer group waiver plan for prescription drug benefits, and that would be effective. Would have to be implemented before January 1st, 2014. That's going to a essentially Medicare Part D plan. Mr. Riebling can explain that a whole lot better than I can. But it saves us money. That's pretty much all I know about it.
All right, so my first question, Mr. Riebling, is how fast historically have Metro's insurance and pension benefits grown over the last several years, or whatever history you're familiar with?
The pension costs have been fairly stable over the last several years. That's a kind of a calculation that's derived on the market value of the investment portfolio, as well as some other indications. And because of the lack of employee pay raises over the last several years, you've not seen the need to increase the Metro contribution appreciably. I think the stress on that will be over the next few years because employees are living longer, retirees are living longer in general, and so there's more going into the retirement system. And so I've seen different actuarial numbers, but it should be going up a little bit over the next few years. And going back to the 10-year, we think is a move in the right direction. It's probably the first time we've seen any reduction in Metro employee benefits in some time. The health insurance one, I think, are equally as probably more critical. Even than the pension. Our pension system is in very sound financial condition. We are approaching 90% funded on our pension plan, which is puts us on the high end of public pension systems. And so some tweaking there on the vesting will help. But again, we're in pretty good shape. The big liability for Metro is on our what's called OPEB liability. You've probably heard that term, which are other post-employment benefits. And there, I would say that Metro is very much on the, I hate to use the word generous or liberal. I'm not sure what that really means, but has much broader benefits for retiree medical coverage than most employers do. For example, at the state, when you turn 65, you get Medicare. I mean, you're eligible for Medicare. You have no state supplemental coverage, anything of that nature. And here you're eligible for full Metro coverage. It's secondary payment to Medicare, but still you're eligible for the coverage. And so there we have a very large unfunded liability. approaching it's in excess of $2 billion. And these changes, as proposed, will probably knock somewhere between 15 and 20% off of that liability once implemented. And so a major step forward along those lines. And so while the pension costs have been sort of stagnated, you are seeing annual insurance costs rising somewhere in the 5 to 15% a year over the last 4 or 5 years. This year, I think we budget about a 5 or 7% increase on employee for health contributions starting in January, and that's pretty much the norm. And I think that's going to be the norm for the next several years.
We're talking major dollars, though, obviously, and this is a step.
Well, I mean, 10% of our budget goes to benefit cost, just between health cost and pension. And so this is, as I said, I mean, if you're the dictator and you can make rules, you might do a lot more in terms of lowering these costs. But obviously, it's a balancing act. And it's important to balance a strong system of benefits and the needs of the employees with the financial health of the government. And these are all steps in the right direction. And I think we relook at it again a few years down the road, and we may have to make some more changes. But for right now, where we are, I think these are a good step forward.
What were the arguments in 2001 when the council and the mayor proposed going from the 10-year down to a 5-year vesting?
Well, my comments will be hearsay because I wasn't here. But my understanding was it was primarily designed to allow us to compete with the state for employees, to recruitment of employees. The state has a 5-year vesting program. Metro's was 10, historically had been 10, and they felt the need to lower it to 5 years to be able to compete with the state for employees. That's what I was told.
That's not a worry now, that there are qualified employees out there to fill the positions that we're trying to seek with a 10-year.
I mean, we interviewed, my staff interviewed today for position for some of the clerks functions that we're going to take over. And I think for this job, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 qualified applicants.
For how many positions?
One.
You want to repeat that?
About 350 applicants, qualified applicants for one position.
Well, I'm just being sarcastic a little bit because at some point, we're going to have to, the residency requirement bill will come back up, and just pointing out the supply, and I'm sure some of those were Davidson County residents and some were out of county, but there are certainly qualified pools at this stage for employees.
I mean, we're not having any shortage of applicants for whatever job that we have opening for.
You remember that quote? I'm going to use that here as well. The one big, you touched on it briefly, the one big elephant that the study and formulating committee did not address was going to employee contributions toward pension plans. What was the discussion there, and why was that issue not put on the table?
It was put on the table. I put a number of items on the table that I thought ought to be considered, again, not in form of a recommendation, but that should be considered by the study and formulating committee. That included employee contributions to the pension system, to not having any retirement benefits for health care. I mean, all that I thought needed to be looked at in the context of what other communities do. And I can't really speak for why the 5 members of the study and formulating committee chose not to go in that direction now, but I think if I could surmise, it's probably because the system itself, we're in pretty solid shape financially. There's no need, we don't have a dramatic situation as you see in some other communities that are declaring bankruptcy because of their pension system and things of that nature. So there wasn't a crisis kind of situation set in there. And I think that tempered with the fact that when the committee, up until the committee did its report, employees had not received a pay raise for a number of years subsequent to that. So to ask employees to contribute at a time which they weren't getting a pay raise, I think the committee, again, surmising, it was some discussion, not a lot of discussion, felt it wasn't probably a proper time to do that, go that step.
Does the administration monitor not only the comp cities, but also cities throughout the country that is the trend going toward employee-contributed pension plans or away toward the plan that we have now?
I think that we are on increasingly rare side of communities that don't have any employee contribution, although the state does not have any employee contribution as well.
Okay, and how often legally can the Study and Formulating Committee meet?
It can meet whenever the mayor chooses to appoint one, but legally, under the charter, you're obligated to create, to name and ask the council to approve the names of a Study and Formulating Committee every 5 years.
Well, obviously, this is a great first step, but, we're seeing more and more cities nationwide reach financial crisis, and maybe because of our diversity of economy and other factors, we haven't been quite as impacted by the economic recession, but there's going to be some point that we can no longer continue printing money and ask our citizens to pay this. And to me, it's easier to do that in a non-crisis time than it is to do it when we're facing real financial crisis. So I just hope sometime we'll keep it in the back of our mind that that's an issue that needs thorough discussion in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Tiger. Councilor Moore?
Just a quick question. We were still on 237, the bill itself, or were we on the amendment? Which one? The bill itself.
Yes.
I just had a question. In your analysis, you had said about that there was some recommendations approved, some were not. How can we tell which were approved and which were?
All of the recommendations that are in the bill were approved. The
Okay.
Study and Formulating Committee made a couple more recommendations that were not acted on by the Benefit Board. Mr. Ebeling, do you remember exactly what those were? I can't remember off the top of my head.
There was one on allowing pension credited service for lump sum vacation. That was one that was not pushed on because the cost of it was unknown at this time, so we chose not to go forward on that. And there was one other one, Mr. Cooper, which I can't remember which it was. I'll try to locate it. But there was a number of other recommendations that were made to the Study and Formulating Committee that they chose not to recommend at this time. And if you look at I'm pretty sure the entire Study and Formulating report is online. Okay. You can take a look at that and get a listing of all those not recommendations, all those areas that they looked at but chose not to recommend at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you. And you did say it would save us a lot of money.
In the long run, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Councilmember Garrett?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank my colleague for not asking me about this. This is one time that I wasn't here when this was done. Thank you.
No problem, Councilman. Councilmember Todd?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make one quick comment on this amendment number 2 that didn't even get a second. This council, this is the perfect time for us to address this issue. States all across the country are reforming their pensions. Just like Mr. Riebling said, this is a huge problem for governments at the city level, the state level, federal level. And remember, we just raised taxes on the people in Nashville. And this is a very rich benefit for the people on the Metro Council, and our constituents see that. When we had this discussion a month ago, Councilman Maynard said, I don't feel appropriate voting for this because it grandfathers out, exempts everybody in this room. Well, all of the recommendations that are in the pension reform bill that Mr. Riebling has discussed exempt the current employees of Davidson County. It doesn't kick in until January 1. So what this is doing is exactly what the pension reform study group has recommended. And for us to sit here and continue this benefit for the Metro Council that's so rich at a time we're raising taxes on the citizens of Davidson County, at a time when governments all across the country are cutting back on health care and pension benefits, shame on the Metro Council. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Todd. Any further discussion? All right, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Bill is passed as amended. BL 2012-238 authorizes the Director of Public Property Administration to accept 2 easements for use in the Harpeth River and Mill Creek Greenways. It's been properly moved. Do I have a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Bill passes. BL 2012-239 authorizes the acquisition of property located at 916 Berwick Trail for the Neely's Bend Pump Station upgrade project at an acquisition cost of $60,000. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Bill passes. And the final bill, BL 2012-240, authorizes the Director of Public Property Administration to acquire property located at 3404 Hobbs Road next to Julia Green Elementary School for the benefit of the Metro Board of Education. And there is an amendment proposed on this. The amendment's been moved. Do I have a second? Any discussion on the amendment? Council?
The amendment deletes an incorrect reference to this property being acquired for a police precinct and substitutes that it's for the benefit of the Board of Education.
All right. Any other discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the housekeeping amendment? All opposed? The amendment passes. Any discussion on the bill itself? Councilman Pardue?
I don't have a question on that business. I just have a general question for when y'all through with your business for Mr. Rebelin or John.
Right. Any discussion on 2012-240? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Bill passes. Councilmember Pardue.
John, can you tell me how many members of council actually are part of the retirement part of the insurance plan?
I have that list in my office. It's about 2/3, I think.
Now, can they opt out of that on their own if that's what they want to do?
Yes.
That's all.
Now, that includes a couple who are
Well, there's some of us-
retired that
Right.
are receiving a service pension, not as a result of council, but
Exactly,
yeah.
but you don't have to accept it if you,
That's
we get
correct.
ours through the police department, but people who are taking it that don't want it, they can give it back. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Tackett.
While we've opened this door, I am going to call on my guru to my left here, who was around when a lot of this occurred. The council used to have other, quote, perks or benefits that have since been taken away, where we succumb to or public pressure. One, for instance, was the ability to use Metro Parks facilities at no charge. And I'm not a golfer, and I used the ability to play golf on a Metro course maybe 5 times in my 20-year history. But one of the things it did allow me to do was to go out there and to survey the condition of our golf courses. And when citizens called and said, our fairways are terrible, or our erosion problems at this course, you know, you almost have to go out there and visit the course and to get the feel to know how to respond to those and to make suggestions. So just in defense of this insurance benefit, and I'm not sure exactly because I am on it, I will say that, but the council has stripped ourselves of a lot of abilities and things that made us better council members over the years. And I worry, Councilman Todd, that this job is not as much fun as it was 20, 25 years ago for a variety of different reasons. I think it's social media and more people being involved. So, you know, one misword, one misstep, and the next thing you know, you've got problems. And I just worry that we take away everything that the council has over and above the small salary that we've paid. And And you're going to get to the point where you have people that don't want to run for this office, or people that may not be as qualified as others who would consider running if these perks or abilities were there. And I don't know if Councilman Garrett, because some of us fought for some of these rights to make us better council members, and now they're gone. So I just say that as one of the reasons why we need to think really strong and hard and about what actions this council has.
Thank you, Councilman Tiger. Councilman Garrett, would you like to
I'll just
respond?
say one thing that we took away a lot of things that's from parking. I think we used to get free parking in metro lots and things, but for district council members, some of you may remember, you used to get $450 of expense allowance that allowed you to contact your constituents. And that was done away with, and it was added to our pay. I guess that's how we got a pay raise, and that's been umpteen numbers of years. But what I have heard from a lot of district council members and from individuals that are out there is your neighbors will say, I never got contacted. And they're always, now everybody thinks they've got a computer. Everybody thinks that you get instant on the computer, because as soon as you put it on there, you think everybody gets it. But I'm just, it's just one less thing that a council member has to contact its individuals. Even if it's snail mail, your constituents think that they're supposed to hear from you, and the only way you can do it is out of your own pocket. That was one of the things that we took away from the council. Just one of those other things.
Thank you, Councilman Garrett. Because we do have a stacked agenda for our committee meetings, I will let Councilman Harmon, he's the last in the queue, be the last comment before we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to move that we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.